All right, welcome everybody to SAT Reading Crash Course. This is day one, part one. We're working on the reading section today. And we've got Caden with us. Say hi to everybody, Caden.
Hi, guys.
All right. Thanks, Caden. And today, yes, we're doing reading. I want to start with the rules for reading, which we've got here up on the screen. First, I want to talk a little bit also about the reading section. The reading section is a long-term sort of project. Okay, and when I say long-term project, I mean to get a boost on the reading section, there's really two elements going on here. You've got to do two things. You've got to boost your reading comprehension first, just in general. Okay, so I'm going to teach you some skills that are going to apply to basically anything that you read on your own for all your classes, any of your own personal reading. I'm going to teach you sort of an approach to text and academic text specifically, the kind of text that they're going to test you on the SAT. Okay, so that's the first part. And in the first part of today's session, we're just going to talk about reading and approaching reading. Does that make sense, Caden?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then the second part is sort of answering the questions on the SAT reading section. Okay, and we're going to get to that in part two of today's session. But they're really kind of two different skill sets that we're going to be working on simultaneously. One, approaching academic text and especially emphasizing academic vocabulary, and then approaching the questions the right way. So both of those two we'll be doing kind of at the same time. Okay. All right, so let's start with my rules for reading. Go ahead and read rule number one. You see it there on the screen, Caden?
Yes.
Okay, read rule number one for my rules for reading.
Okay. Look up every word you don't know from this point forward. Do it.
Yes. All right. I cannot emphasize this enough, Caden, how important this is. And for anybody watching the recording as well. You need to make a habit of looking up any vocab word you don't know. You just need to do it. And that applies to any prep you're doing for the SAT. That applies to any reading you're doing for your classes or any reading you're doing on your own. When you see a word you don't know, you need to look it up. Okay? And the reason for that is if you know the vocab, this is the biggest factor, by the way, for student success on the SAT reading section, is academic vocabulary. If you know the words you're reading, you understand the ideas being communicated. It's that simple. And if you don't know the words that you're reading, you don't understand the ideas being communicated. It might as well be a foreign language. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, and it's the same thing. If you study a foreign language like French or Spanish or whatever, German for that matter, if you understand the words that you're reading, you can understand the ideas. And if you don't understand the words, you don't know what you're reading. It's that simple, and it's that simple for academic text as well. So don't be intimidated by academic texts. It's mostly a vocab issue. And once you know what the words are, you understand the ideas. So you have to get in the habit of looking up every single word you don't know. It's a small investment of time up front, but it's going to slowly build over time. After like 4 weeks, 5 weeks of looking up every word you don't know. First of all, you're not going to have to look up as many words because you're going to know what more words mean. But you're just going to start understanding everything you're reading in a relatively short period of time. I mean, I'm talking like, certainly after like 2 months, 3 months of this habit, your reading comprehension is just going to explode. And it's a long-term project, but I can't recommend enough. It's absolutely necessary if you're going to succeed on the reading section. There's no amount of like strategy or approach to the questions or little tricks I can teach you if you don't understand the ideas being communicated in the passage. Does that make sense, Caden?
Yes.
Okay, so that's rule number one. Go ahead and read rule number two for us, please.
Okay. Read for meaning. Don't just rush through text. Slow down, reread when necessary, and ask yourself, what ideas is the author trying to communicate here?
Yeah, and so we're going to approach this text very, very, very carefully. And of course, you can't do this on the actual SAT. It's a time test. They give you like 65 minutes to answer like 52 questions. You're going to have to go through it quickly. But to start, at least, we're going to be doing just untimed work. We're going to emphasize approaching academic text the right way. So take your time. There's just no rush here. We're going to read well. But you have to read well slowly first before you can read well quickly. So we're going to take all the time in the world. Again, this first part of today's session, we're going to read one passage. And it's probably going to take the whole time because we're reading a passage from the 1800s. A lot of high-level academic vocabulary, a lot of kind of complex sentence structure, stuff like that. So we're going to practice approaching academic text the right way. Any questions, Caden?
No.
Okay, let's jump into it. So we've got a PSAT practice test here. I really like this. Passage. This is a Jane Austen passage. Have you ever read Jane Austen before, Caden?
Wait, I think I Yeah, I just wrote about her in
Okay.
the author profile.
Okay, yeah, I wrote some essays on Jane Austen novels that I never read when I was in high school, and I never appreciated Jane Austen much as a student. I really like her now. She really just gets character and human nature. She just really gets it. I didn't appreciate it a lot when I was younger. This passage is over 200 years old, and
Right.
so we're going to see some words here that either you've never seen before or just have very different meanings today. Um, it's a tough passage, but we're going to chew on this language. We're going to talk a lot about vocab, and we're going to understand it before we approach the questions. Okay. So I would love to read this together. If you'll read loud and proud, starting with the introduction. You've got to read the introductions to these passages. They provide some good context for what we're about to read.
Okay.
Go ahead and start with the introduction to this passage, and we'll read through it. I'll be stopping you a lot. I'm just warning you. We're going to talk a lot about vocabulary here. Go ahead.
This passage is adapted from Jane Austen, Emma, originally published in 1815.
Okay, yeah, over 200 years old. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read that first paragraph, please.
Okay. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her.
Okay, I'm going to stop you real quick. A couple things real quick. That word handsome, right? Emma Woodhouse is described as handsome. We probably wouldn't describe a young lady as being handsome today. It's a little bit surprising, I think, right? Somehow, and I don't know when the transition happened, but now that word is reserved for good-looking men. But back in those days, just be aware, you could call a young lady handsome, and that would be a fine compliment back in those days. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, that word disposition, she has a happy disposition. What do you think that word disposition means?
Like overall feeling to her.
It's not just feeling to her.
Like,
it's more specific than that. Disposition here kind of means like personality. She is disposed to be a certain way. She's inclined to be a certain way. And that's kind of her personality here. So she's kind of like a happy personality or a happy like emotional state consistently.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? She's disposed to be happy. Okay. Now here, this part's tricky. It says she seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence. Caden, what in the heck does that mean?
I would probably say that she seemed to be. She almost like how am I trying to word this?
What does unite mean?
Bring together.
Bring together. So she seemed to unite or bring together some of the best blessings of existence. You can figure that out.
Yeah, she was. She seemed to kind of bring make things better in a way. I think is what they're trying to say here.
I don't see necessarily her making things better, although I suspect that's probably the case too. You know, she probably did bring up the people around her. I mean, if you have a happy disposition, you're handsome and clever and rich. But here it's more specific, saying she brought together like all the good things a person could have going on. She unites that in herself, right? She's good looking, she's smart, she's rich, she's got a great personality, right? In today's terms, you might say she's got it going on.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
So this kind of restates what they said.
Yeah, exactly, right. She's kind of like she's the total package. She's just a great girl. She's got everything going. She's got everything going her way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
She seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, like the best things that a person could have going for them. She's got it going on in one package. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's it. Okay. Now the next part says she'd lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. What does vex mean? Do you know?
Vex.
I tell you what, go ahead and look it up. And this is what I'm going to encourage anybody, sort of doing this work on their own. If you see a word you don't know, just type it in. Just honestly, just do a Google search. Just type in vex and then definition. And the Google definitions are generally pretty straightforward. I kind of like them. When you see you might see some more complex definitions using like dictionary.com or like another dictionary of some sort. The Google ones are pretty straightforward. So go ahead and just type in vex definition and tell me what you see.
Okay. It says to make someone feel annoyed, frustrated, or worried, especially with trivial matters.
Great. To annoy. Synonyms are good too. If you type in vex and synonym, go and type in vex and synonym. I'm curious what you get. I'm guessing you get something like annoy.
Annoy, irritate,
There you go. Right.
infuriate.
Synonyms are great too. In fact, maybe even better, right? Because then you just find a synonym that you can kind of plug in that sentence and make sense of. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex or annoy her. Does that idea make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So she's had a comfortable life. Not any real problems going on here. At least at this stage, 21 years in the world. Any questions?
Right. No.
Okay. Now that we know what all the words mean, go ahead and read that paragraph again. I think it's going to make a lot of sense very easily. Go ahead and take that again.
Okay. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect sense, especially if you know the vocabulary.
Right.
Okay? All right. Let's read the next paragraph. Go ahead.
Okay. She was the youngest of 2 daughters of a most affectionate, indulgent father, and had, in consequence of her sister's marriage, been mistress of his house from a very early period.
All right. Whoa. Lot going on there. Woo. Okay, let's talk about vocab. So she has an indulgent father. An affectionate, indulgent father. What does indulgent mean?
Indulgence, I think here it would be like he's very hands-on, caring, like wanting to be there to support his family.
Yeah, maybe. I want you to look up indulgent real quick. Just do indulgent definition. Okay. Tell me what you get. It's more specific than that.
Having a tendency to be overly generous.
Ooh, yeah, overly generous. Interesting, right? Which is a little bit different from what you were saying. It's more specific. If a parent is overly generous to their children, what usually happens to the child?
They get spoiled.
Absolutely. Right. If kids get used to like getting everything they want, they just assume they're always going to get what they want. You get a spoiled brat. Okay. It's not good. You can be generous. That's good to be generous. But overly generous, you can be overly generous. If you give people what they want all the time, they're going to start expecting it, which is going to create flaws in character. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Normally when you hear that term indulgent, I see it a lot in chocolate commercials.
And yeah.
Indulge yourself. Indulge your senses. Right. And that's what that means. Be overly generous with your senses. Anyway, so he's a little bit indulgent, a little bit overly generous. All right, and then Emma had, in consequence of her sister's marriage, as a result of her sister's marriage, been mistress of his house from a very early period. What does mistress mean here?
Like the lady of the house.
The lady of the house. Perfect. Very different definition than sort of the modern common usage of mistress today. Let's recognize that, right?
Right.
That means that just means something very different today. I'm not going to get into that right now. But it's the feminine form of master. So if you're the master of the house, you're the man of the house. If you're the mistress of the house, you're the lady of the house, the highest ranking woman in the house. Does that make sense, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. So why is she the highest ranking woman in the house? It tells us why.
Because of her sister's marriage.
Her sister's marriage, right? Her sister got married, went off to live with her husband. Now she's the highest ranking woman in the house. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We'll find out where her mom is or was here in just a moment. Go ahead and read the next sentence, please.
All right. Her mother had died too long ago for her to have more than an indistinct remembrance of her caresses, and her place had been supplied by an excellent woman as governess, who had fallen little short of a mother in affection.
Okay. So much going on here. It's so easy to read that and be like, what? What? So much going on. Okay. But again, I'm guessing there's some vocab that you didn't fully understand. Okay? So let's talk about the vocab here. So her mother died too long ago for her to have more than an indistinct remembrance of her caresses. What does indistinct mean, Katie?
Indistinct, it's like, it's kind of like a blurry, hazy.
Yeah. Unclear, yeah. Right? Distinct would mean clear. So indistinct means not clear. So even if you're not sure what indistinct means, you know what distinct means. Figure out the opposite of distinct. Okay, so it's unclear, blurry, hazy. I love it. So she has a blurry remembrance of her caresses. What is a caress?
Like her loving touch.
Loving touch, a gentle touch, absolutely. Right. And if you didn't know what that means, look it up. At this point in your prep, if you just started the reading section, you just need to use this as an opportunity to boost your vocab. But yes, it does mean a gentle touch. So her mother had died too long ago for her to have more than an indistinct remembrance of her caresses. So what does that mean?
That she can barely remember it.
She barely remembers her mother. All she remembers, she has an unclear memory of her touch. That's it. Does that make sense, Caden?
Yes.
Okay, let's keep reading. And her place had been supplied, and supplied here just means replaced. Her place had been replaced or supplied by an excellent woman as governess. What's a governess, Caden?
Like, I'm not sure what it would mean here.
Yeah. Go ahead and look up governess. Governess definition. Google
it. A woman employed to teach children in a private household.
Yeah, I think it should say employed, right? Employed to teach children.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like governess is like a nanny. That's also like responsible
Gotcha.
for education and discipline. Think like Mary Poppins.
Right.
Have you seen Mary Poppins?
Yes.
Or like Sound of Music?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's okay. You're familiar with those. I'm sure there's a lot of kids watch this and maybe not familiar with those movies. That's whatever. That's fine. But yeah, it's you're acting like a parent basically, right? For discipline and education in the household. That's it. Okay.
Right.
So her mother had been replaced by an excellent woman as governess. Now it says who had fallen little short of a mother in affection. What does that mean, Caden?
That she was not the same as like a mother figure in the house.
She was not the same.
She kind of she wasn't she didn't give the same care.
She did not. No, but notice that here it says, Caden, says she had fallen little short of a mother in affection.
So not very, like, she was very much as like similar.
Yeah, she's almost as affectionate as a mother. A lot of students read this and they get the opposite impression from the one that's trying to be communicated here, right? They read this and they're like, oh, she's not very affectionate. No. It's the opposite. She had fallen little short of a mother in affection, right? If she'd fallen greatly short of a mother in affection, okay, she's not very affectionate. But she had fallen little short of a mother in affection. This governess loves Emma almost as much as a mother would love her. Does that idea make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Be careful there, right? That one word, right? Little. Short. It's a greatly short. Okay, different deal. She's fallen little short of her mother. She's almost as affectionate as a mother. I want you to read that paragraph again now that we know this vocabulary. I think it's going to make a ton of sense.
All right. She was the youngest of the two daughters of a most affectionate, indulgent father, and had, in consequence of her sister's marriage, been mistress of his house from a very early period. Her mother had died too long ago for her to have more than an indistinct remembrance of her caresses, and her place had been supplied by an excellent woman as governess, who had fallen little short of a mother in affection.
Does that make sense now?
Yes.
Perfect sense. Once you understand basically what the words mean. You might have to reread a sentence or two. You're like, wait, what is that going on there, right? And kind of just chew on the language a little bit. Consider what the author's possibly trying to communicate here. But, and that's okay. Especially at this stage in the game, we're doing untimed work. If you don't understand what you're reading, go back and reread it. That's okay. That's good. Especially once you know what the vocab means. Go back and reread it.
Right.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. Let's read the next paragraph.
Okay. 16 years had Miss Taylor been in Mr. Woodhouse's family, less as a governess than a friend, very fond of both daughters, but particularly of Emma.
All right, does that make sense right there, that sentence?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Between them, it was more the intimacy of sisters.
What does intimacy mean, Caden?
Relationship.
What kind of relationship? If you have an intimate relationship with someone, what's that mean?
Like, I don't know how to word it.
You can look it up. Look up intimacy. Intimacy definition.
Okay. Closely acquainted, familiar, close.
Yeah, a close relationship. That's it. Right? If you're intimate with someone, you're close with someone. Right?
Right.
Okay. So between Emma and Miss Taylor, it's a very intimate. It's like the intimacy of sisters. Okay. They're very close. Keep reading from line 19. Even before Miss Taylor.
Even before Miss Taylor had ceased to hold the nominal office of governess, the mildness of her temper had hardly allowed her to impose any restraint.
All right, I'm going to stop you. Woo! There's some vocab there. Okay. So even before Miss Taylor had ceased, do you know what it means to cease?
To stop.
To stop, yes. Cease and desist, yes. Actually, I'm not sure what desist means, but that's okay. But cease means to stop, yes. And so even before Miss Taylor had stopped holding the nominal office of governess. Do you know what nominal means, Caden?
Head. That's like the top of it.
That's a good guess. Do you know any Latin, Caden?
It's been a long time.
Do you know any Spanish?
Slightly.
What does nombre mean? Nombre.
Wait, like.
You know what I mean?
Like the number?
No. Nombre is name. Name.
Oh.
Name. Right. In Latin, yeah, you're good. In Latin, in nomine Patrius et Filius et Spiritus Sancti, right? In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Nomine means name. Okay, it's where we get the word like to nominate someone to a position. It just means to name them to a position. Okay. So even before Miss Taylor had stopped holding the nominal office of governess. Now here office doesn't mean like, a room, right? It means the position.
Right.
Right? We talk about like the office of the presidency or something like that. We're talking about the position of the presidency, not the Oval Office, right? We're not talking about where he works. We're talking about the position. So even before she'd stopped holding the nominal office of governess, okay? So this is even while she was still being called the governess. Keep reading.
Right.
The mildness of her temper. What does temper mean here?
What's a synonym for temper? Like her I don't know.
A lot of students read this and they think it means anger, right? Because we hear the phrase like, "Oh, I've got a bad temper, real bad temper." Okay. Well, the reason why that's implies anger is because it's a bad temper or a bad temperament. Temper is a synonym for temperament, which means personality, right?
Right.
So she has a very mild temper or mild temperament or mild personality. She's kind and gentle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the mildness of her temper had hardly allowed her to impose any restraint. What does that mean, to impose any restraint? What does impose mean? What's impose mean?
To, put upon.
Yes, put upon, to force.
Yes.
To force any restraint. And to restrain means to hold back.
Right.
So what does it mean here? What's the author saying? When she says the mildness of her temper, the mildness of her personality, had hardly allowed her to impose any restraint. What does that mean?
It means that she was so gentle that she barely would put any punishment on them.
Yeah. She couldn't restrain, Emma in any way. Absolutely. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So even before Miss Taylor had ceased to hold the nominal office of governess, so even while she was still being called the governess, the mildness of her temper hardly allowed her to impose any restraint. Keep reading, please.
And the shadow of authority being now long passed away, they had been living together as friend and friend, very mutually attached, and Emma doing just what she liked, highly esteeming Miss Taylor's judgment, but directed chiefly by her own.
Yeah, what does it mean when it says she's highly esteeming? Emma is highly esteeming Miss Taylor's judgment. What's that mean?
It would be that she has an ego, maybe.
I don't see anything about ego here. What does it mean to esteem someone or something? If you hold someone in high esteem, what's that mean?
To think well of them?
Yeah, to think well of them, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So Emma highly esteems Miss Taylor's judgment, thinks very highly of Miss Taylor's judgment. That's all. Does that make sense?
Right.
Then it says, but she's directed chiefly by her own. What does that mean?
That she goes by what she thinks is right.
Yeah. So she respects Miss Taylor's judgment, but she does what she wants. She's directed chiefly by her own judgment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Whew. A lot going on in that paragraph. Okay. Not all the paragraphs, and certainly not all the passages are this difficult, have this much language to chew on. Okay. In fact, the rest of the passage is much more straightforward. These first three are really tricky. But I want you to read this paragraph again. Now that we've talked about the vocab, now that we've chewed on the language a little bit, read it. I think it's going to make perfect sense.
Okay. Where was I reading from?
From line 15, 16 years.
Okay, 16 years had Miss Taylor been in Mr. Woodhouse's family, less as a governess than a friend, very fond of both daughters, but particularly of Emma. Between them, it was more the intimacy of sisters. Even before Miss Taylor had ceased to hold the nominal office of governess, the mildness of her temper had hardly allowed her to impose any restraint, and the shadow of authority being now long passed away, they had been living together as friend and friend, very mutually attached, and Emma doing just what she liked, highly esteeming Miss Taylor's judgment, but directed chiefly by her own.
Does that make sense, Caden?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's just a vocab game, man. It's just a vocab game. If you know the vocabulary...
Last sentence is so long.
Oh, it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It just goes on and on.
And sometimes you're going to have to stop. Even if you know the vocab, you got to stop and you got to reread. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's because the more that you get familiar with this kind of language, this kind of high-level academic language, and this sort of very, formal, more complex syntax, which is just a fancy word for sentence structure, the easier it gets. But you've got to be able to do it first, untimed, on your own, before you can do it timed on an actual SAT. So you just got to practice this. You got to practice reading well. Okay. I'm guessing you're familiar with sort of like with you've experienced this before where you like read a page or two in like a text or in a novel or in a textbook and you stop and you're like, what did I just read?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like those days are over. Don't do that anymore. That's how you build up bad habits. And that's how you never improve your reading comprehension. If you approach text like, if you're like, oh, I've got this like 20-page assignment, I've got to read it. Great. Okay, you read it. Great. You spent 20 minutes reading 20 pages. Congratulations. You learned almost nothing. Every text is an opportunity for you to learn better, like learn higher level vocabulary, to understand more complex ideas. Every single thing you read is an opportunity to do that. You've got to take advantage of that opportunity. Otherwise, you're just going to struggle on all these passages.
Gotcha.
And there's no like amount of strategy or anything I could teach you when we're talking about approaching the questions that's going to help if you don't understand the ideas being communicated by the author. Does that make sense, Caden?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the name of the game right now. It's just approaching text the right way. You got to take your time. I call it reading for meaning. And if you read something and you don't understand the meaning, you don't understand the ideas being communicated, you got to find a way to find out what's being communicated. Most of it's vocab. It's 90% of the game. And then rereading and kind of considering possibly the ideas, especially in the context of the passage, the ideas being communicated. Okay?
Okay.
All right, let's keep reading. So we're at the top of the second column here. The real evils. This is line 28. Go ahead and take it.
Okay. The real evils, indeed, of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way and a disposition to think a little too well of herself.
All right, we'll stop. Real quick, so the word evils here, right? We're talking about like evil, like Satan or something like that here. I mean, just like a bad thing that's going on, a problem.
Right.
Okay, so the real problems of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way and a disposition to think a little too well of herself. What does that mean?
The power of having rather too much her own way, it's saying that she's a little bit, she gets what she wants, and then a disposition to think a little too well of herself. She has a habit to have an ego. Yeah, she definitely got some ego here. And this ties in, to what we were talking about earlier about her having an indulgent father. She's used to getting what she wants. She gets what she wants, right? Her father gives her what she wants, and Miss Taylor doesn't hold her back, right? She gets what she wants. Right.
And she thinks a little too well of herself. I don't need any names, but do you know of any people that think like they don't have any problems or anything wrong with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. These people exist. Okay. It's a thing. And Emma's one of those people. Like she's just like Miss Perfect. She thinks a little bit too well of herself. And don't get me wrong, she's got a lot of good things going on in her life. She does.
Right.
But everybody's got problems, whether they recognize it or not.
Yeah.
And it's a problem to think you don't have problems. That's a problem.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's what's going on. And we see that word disposition again, right? She is disposed, she's inclined to think a little too well of herself. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Keep reading, please.
These were the disadvantages which threatened alloy to her many enjoyments.
Yeah, I'm stepping over. So this is an interesting sentence here. So these were the disadvantages. Here they mean sort of like disadvantages like socially and personally for her, right? The bad things she had going on, the problems. And it says, which threatened alloy to her many enjoyments. Do you know what an alloy is?
Not really.
You may have heard it before in the context of in like a science class, especially when we're talking about like a combination of metals, which is what an alloy is generally referred to, right? Like bronze is a classic example of an alloy because it's a combination or mixture of copper and tin. Okay, bronze isn't an element; it's a combination of two elements, copper and tin. It's an alloy. Okay, does that make sense? You've heard that? You've heard that before, maybe? Okay. So here, and this is very funky because I'll be honest, I'm not sure even like what part of speech alloy is here, if it's like a verb or I guess it's like a noun, but it's a very funky sentence structure here. But the idea is that it's threatened, these disadvantages threatened to combine. They threatened to alloy to her many enjoyments, that is her many personal and social enjoyments, the good things she has going on in her life.
Gotcha.
Does that idea make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and you can kind of figure that even though the sentence structure is funky, and I'll be honest, I don't fully understand, like, I don't fully get the sentence structure or all the parts of speech here, but I get the idea, and that's good enough here. Okay.
Yeah.
The danger, please.
Okay. The danger, however, was at present so unperceived that they did not by any means rank as misfortunes with her.
What does that mean?
That she didn't notice. She didn't know.
Yeah. She doesn't see these problems as problems, which we discussed earlier is a problem. Okay. Any questions about that paragraph, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay, good. Let's keep reading, please. Line 35. Sorrow came.
Okay. Sorrow came, a gentle sorrow, but not at all in the shape of any disagreeable consciousness. Miss Taylor married.
Okay, stop. What does disagreeable mean?
Well, to not agree.
Yeah, it's right. It's the opposite of agree. But what would that mean? Disagree, not in the shape of any disagreeable consciousness.
I think here it's like saying that she didn't. Maybe she didn't like fully think about it.
Yeah, she's not. Yeah, exactly. She's not fully aware of it, right?
Yeah.
And here disagreeable starts to means like uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. I love in like really old movies, like people talk about like that soup did not agree with me. I don't know if you've ever heard that. That's a really interesting phrasing, right? Yeah. But like it just means it here disagreeable just means uncomfortable. So she's not fully aware of this. Not fully aware of it's a gentle sorrow. She's not like in this tormented state or anything like that. She's not even fully aware of it. But this gentle sorrow came when Miss Taylor married. Okay. Keep reading from line 37. It was Miss Taylor's loss.
It was Miss Taylor's loss which first brought grief. It was on the wedding day of his beloved friend that Emma first sat in a mournful thought of any continuance.
Yeah, and here we're talking about like the continuance of their relationship, of their friendship.
Right.
Okay, keep reading.
The wedding over and the bride people gone, her father and herself were left to dine together with no prospect of a third to cheer a long evening. Her father composed himself to sleep after dinner, as usual, and she had then only to sit and think of what she had lost.
Okay. So what's going on here at this point?
It's kind of like saying how the wedding, it's kind of going from that point of her through like the wedding and the aftermath of how she's feeling after that.
Yeah, and how is she feeling?
Very sad, not good.
Yeah. It says there was no prospect of a third to cheer a long evening. What does that mean?
There was nobody else to like make her feel happy.
Yeah, right. It was just her and her father eating together, right? And it says her father composed himself to sleep after dinner. You know what composed means here? Composed himself to sleep?
Like to make yourself?
Yeah, I mean, just got ready for bed. He composed himself to sleep after dinner. Yeah, and then she's alone, and she has only to sit and think about what she had lost. So she's lonely. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, that's not too bad. Let's keep reading.
Okay. The event had every promise of happiness for her friend. Mr. Weston was a man of unexceptionable character, easy fortune, suitable age, and pleasant manners.
Okay, let me stop you real quick. That word unexceptionable, do you know what unexceptionable means?
Unbelievable.
Not necessarily unbelievable. That would be like incredible or something like that. It's not unbelievable. It's unexceptionable, which is the opposite of exceptionable. Okay. If it were exceptionable, then there would be exceptions to his character. You'd be able to take exception to his character. You're like, he's a decent guy, but like he drinks too much, or he gambles, or something like that.
Right. So he just seems like a good dude all around.
He's a good dude all around. Exactly. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because it's not exceptional, it's unexceptionable. There are no exceptions to his character. He's a really good guy all around. And that also makes sense in sort of the context, right? It's like a list of things he's got going for him. He's got an easy fortune. He's got money, right? And he probably doesn't have to work too hard. He probably owns land or something like that. Property.
Yeah.
Suitable age. He's probably older than her, but he's not like 70. Pleasant manners, right? He's got, which was a thing in those days, in some respect, even to these days. But yeah. So he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Keep reading, please.
Okay. There was some satisfaction in considering with what self-denying, generous friendship she had always wished, and promoted the match.
Okay, what does that mean?
There's
some satisfaction in considering with what self-denying, generous friendship she had always wished and promoted the match.
She wished that she knew him better.
I don't see that. There was some satisfaction in something. In what?
In having him around, maybe?
I think that's sort of, you're going off into your imagination a little bit, not focusing on the text quite enough. Okay. Let's break it down. Okay.
Okay.
You're making some reasonable guesses here, but they're guesses, and they're not based on evidence of the text. So there's some satisfaction in considering, or thinking about, right, with what self-denying, generous friendship she had always wished and promoted the match. That is, promoted the match between Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston. Okay. So here's how I like to explain this part here. So she kind of encouraged Miss Taylor to marry Mr. Weston. Is that clear? She had wished and promoted the match. Right? She encouraged them to get married. And it says here there was some satisfaction in thinking about with what self-denying, generous friendship. Like, she's thinking the whole time, like, I'm such a good friend. Like, I think part of her recognized it may not have been in her best interest. Maybe not, she never fully thought about the consequences of it. But she knew, like, when she was encouraging her friend Miss Taylor to get married, that their relationship was probably going to be different. I think she had to recognize that on some level. Right? And the whole time she's like, I'm such a good friend. Like, I'm thinking about my friend. Right? But even in her act of, like, focusing on her, like, doing this good thing for her friend, she's, like, taking self-satisfaction in that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, even her act of selflessness is somewhat selfish.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's you ever watch Seinfeld? Are you familiar with Seinfeld?
I've not watched it.
It's an old, boy, I've got references to Seinfeld and, like, Sonic music and all this. I am old. Kind of. Anyway, that's another conversation another time. But, there's a Seinfeld episode where Jerry, who's the main character, is, like, going around, like, doing good things all day long. Like, he's helping, like, old ladies cross the street, and he's holding doors open for somebody who's got a bunch of bundles in her hand. Like, he's doing all these things. And the whole time in his head, he's got, like, a narrative going on in his head. He's like, I am such a good person. He's thinking of that the whole time. And what's funny, like, he's so focused on himself, like, being satisfied with being a good person, like, he doesn't see that the things he's doing are actually causing more problems. Like, he helps the old lady cross the street, but, like, an accident happens as a result, or, like, the lady with the bundles, like, ends up tripping. Like, and he's not paying attention to that. He's just so satisfied with himself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And there's a little bit of that going on here.
Yeah.
A little bit, right? There was some satisfaction considering with what self-denying, generous friendship she'd always wished and promoted the match. Okay. Anyway, that's the idea. It's not terribly important, but I just want you to understand. Keep reading from line 53, but it was a black morning's work.
But it was a black morning's work for her. The want of Miss Taylor would be felt every hour of every day.
What does that mean, the want of Miss Taylor would be felt every hour of every day?
She would miss her.
Yeah. She'd miss Miss Taylor every hour of every day. Absolutely. Keep going.
She recalled her past kindness, the affection of 16 years, how she had taught and how she had played with her from 5 years old, how she had devoted all her powers to attach and amuse her in health, and how nursed her through the various illnesses of childhood. A large debt of gratitude was owing here.
All right, I'm going to stop you real quick. What is going on here in this part of the passage?
She's just kind of thinking back on everything.
Yeah. Like on her childhood, right?
Right.
And what's she thinking about, like, specifically?
How she had gotten to know Miss Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And how she had just gone through life with her.
Yeah, and how Miss Taylor took care of her.
Right.
Like she had illnesses in childhood, and she was always played with her, amused her in health, Okay. And it says a large debt of gratitude was owing here. What does that mean?
That she felt the need to give back.
Yeah, she felt grateful. A large debt of gratitude. She's very, very thankful. Okay. Keep reading, please.
Okay. But the intercourse of the last 7 years, the equal footing and perfect unreserve which had soon followed Isabella's marriage on their being left to each other was yet a dear, tender recollection.
Okay, a couple things here. Let's start with the vocab. First, we've got to recognize, so the word intercourse here has a very different meaning than probably the more common usage of the word intercourse today. Let's recognize that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into what it means today, but here in this context here, it just means interaction. Okay? The interaction of the last 7 years.
Yes.
Okay? The equal footing and perfect unreserve, which had soon followed Isabella's marriage on their being left to each other, was yet a dear, tender recollection. What does that mean?
It's kind of like, I'm not really sure what it's saying here.
Two things are being compared here. She has these memories of being taken care of when she was a child, right, in the earlier part of the paragraph. Right. Like being in line 55. She recalled her past kindnesses, the kindness and affection of 16 years, when she was taken care of as a child. And then it says, but the intercourse of the last 7 years, the equal footing, right, which means like the equality they had, basically, right? They treat each other as like friend, right? And the perfect unreserve, which had soon followed Isabella's marriage on their being left to each other. So, like, they have a very open relationship. Do you have any friends? Have you ever had a friendship where, like, you can just speak your mind? Like, whatever pops into your head, you can just speak your mind exactly as you're thinking.
Yeah.
No reservations. That's awesome. I mean, you're consider yourself blessed to be able to have a friend like that. That's awesome. It's one of the best things there is in life. And that's what she's referencing there. Perfect unreserve, which had soon followed Isabella's marriage on their being left to each other, was yet a dear, tender recollection than what?
Than the past.
Than even like the earlier past,
right?
When she was taken care of as a child. So she's just kind of just remembering her friendship, right? Because that's all she has left now, because Miss Taylor's gone. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, that's tough. Yeah. There's a lot going on, but again, that's an example. You got to stop and kind of reread, and I mean, first make sure you got the vocab down. But chewing those ideas. Okay, what could be the author? What's the author trying to communicate here with that? And the author's making a comparison between those two stages of memory, the early childhood and then the more recent memories of the past 7 years. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's take it from line 65. It had been a friend.
All right. It had been a friend and companion such as few possessed, intelligent, well-informed, useful, gentle, knowing all the ways of the family, interested in all its concerns, and what is that?
What word is that? Sound that out.
Peculiar.
Yeah, it's tough to sound. It's tough to pronounce. Peculiarly.
Yeah, that's such a
Peculiarly. That is tough. In a peculiar way, is what I mean. Right. Peculiarly.
Right. Interested in herself, in every pleasure, every scheme of hers, one to whom she could speak every thought as it arose, and who had such an affection for her as it could never find fault.
She's a great friend, or was a great friend, right? That's it. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay, great.
Like right now, I'm reading Pride and Prejudice, and I've noticed that Jane Austen loves to restate stuff in different ways.
Yeah. Pride and Prejudice is good, man. I was supposed to read that in school. I never read it. I wrote essays on it. Have you seen the 6-hour like A&E version of Pride and Prejudice?
I have not.
Dude, it is a masterpiece. You need to see it. I'm serious.
All right.
It is some of the best TV that there is. It's like Colin Firth and there's a couple other famous actors in there, and it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I never thought, and that's when I kind of fell in love with Jane Austen, was watching the movie. I know you're supposed to read the book first and then watch the movie, but I saw the movie first. And, but like, it's brilliant, and it is so funny. It is hilarious. And it looks like, if just on the surface, it looks like boring, like, PBS, like, masterpiece theater. Like, I couldn't care less about that stuff normally, but it is so brilliant. Check that out after you read the book.
Okay.
Maybe you might actually want to watch the movie and then read the book, because I think you'll appreciate the book more. Check it out though, and I encourage anybody else watching that. The A&E version of Pride and Prejudice is brilliant, but that's slightly off topic. Let's keep reading from line 73.
Okay. How is she going to bear the change? It was true that her friend was going only half a mile from them, but Emma was aware that great must be the difference between a Miss Weston only half a mile from them and a Miss Taylor in the house.
All right. What is that? What's going on there? What is the author saying there in that part of the passage?
She's kind of like saying that she feels a big difference in between the people almost. Hang on, how am I?
Read it again if you need to. Read it again. Take it again from line 73.
How was she going to bear the change? It was true that her friend was going only half a mile from them, but Emma was aware that great must be the difference between a Miss Weston only half a mile from them and a Miss Taylor in the house.
All right.
So she feels like it's a longer distance.
Yeah. She's only moving half a mile away.
Right.
But she might as well be 100 miles away. Why?
She just misses having her around.
She's not around anymore. And why isn't... Yeah, I mean, she's married now, right?
Yeah.
So her responsibilities are going to be to her husband and her household, not to Emma.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you see how you're able to figure that out when you just reread it?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to chew on language a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself reading something, you're like, wait, what? Go back and reread it. Go back and reread it. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's how you understand language.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Sometimes you got to chew on ideas a little bit. Consider what's possible, what makes sense, what there's evidence for. Okay. All right, let's keep going from line 77. And with all her advantages.
And with all her advantages, natural and domestic, she was now in great danger of suffering from intellectual solitude. She dearly loved her father, but he was in no comparison for her.
What was that?
I just totally read that wrong. But he was no companion for her.
Yeah. What's going on here?
It's stating how she's feeling, and then how she loves her father, but he's not the same.
Not the same as what? You're right.
As Miss Taylor.
Yeah, they don't have the same relationship.
They're not nearly as close.
Yeah. Read that last line, line 81. He could not meet her.
He could not meet her in conversation, rational or playful.
What does that mean, rational or playful?
Like a serious conversation, or just joking.
Yeah. Just being like clever and witty, or just like having a serious conversation on a serious topic. Couldn't do either.
Yeah, he's kind of hands off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or just not. He's just not the same. Just doesn't meet her on the same level. They're on two different levels.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And she's on a higher level. Right. At least intellectually. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Last paragraph.
Okay. The evil of the actual disparity in their ages, and Mr. Woodhouse had not married early, was much increased by his constitution and habits.
All right, you gotta stop. We've got to talk some vocab here. Disparity. Okay. All right, and we see evil first, right? And again, it just means the same problem. It's not like Hitler evil here, right? Just the problem. Yeah. Okay. Of the actual disparity in their ages. What does disparity mean?
There's a big difference.
There's a big difference. That's all disparity means. the difference in their ages. And this is also too, when you're taking the actual test, you're not going to have a dictionary in front of you. You're not going to be able to do a Google search. Like, what word could you plug into that would make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're going to have to kind of figure it out based on the context on the actual test, and difference makes perfect sense, and that's what it means. The actual difference in their ages. And it says, and Mr. Woodhouse had not married early, which means what?
That he was wait.
Mr. Woodhouse had not married early, which means what?
He was not young when he married.
No, he was old. He was old when he got married. Okay.
Right.
And that actual disparity, that difference, was much increased by his constitution and habits. Okay. Now, that word constitution is an interesting word. Right. And I know you're familiar with the word constitution, but probably in the context of government.
Right.
Right. The U.S. Constitution, whatever. Here, constitution, really a better synonym would be health. Health or makeup. What he's made of.
Right.
Which is, by the way, that's what constitution means. What something is constituted of. What it's made up of. And our constitution, like in the U.S. Constitution, right, it tells you what our government is made of. The structure of the government. You got 3 branches of government. You got a president, you got Congress, you got courts, and here's the relation between how it works, what it's made up of.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So constitution is actually a synonym for health.
Gotcha.
So what is the author saying here? That the actual disparity of their ages was much increased by his constitution and habits. What does that mean?
That they were not similar. They didn't have much in common.
It's more specific than that. The evil of the actual disparity in their ages, and Mr. Woodhouse had not married early, was much increased by his constitution and habits. What's the idea there?
Is it saying that he's not healthy?
It's implying that. But there's a really specific idea. Something is being increased.
The difference in their ages.
The difference in their ages is much increased by his constitution or his health and his habits.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there's already a difference in their ages. But because of his health and his habits, like we're talking about him going to bed early, right? Dinner time to go to bed, right? And it's suggesting his health isn't great. I'm just going to talk about that in just a minute. But that increases the difference between their already different ages. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you see the difference there between trying to make a guess about what's going on, and figuring out based on the evidence, based on the language, what the author's saying?
Yeah.
And there's an important difference here. A lot of students are used to reading and just getting impressions. You know what I mean when I say getting impressions?
Yes.
Like you're able to kind of pick up bits and pieces here and there, and then but you're only getting some of the pieces, but you try to put them together into a puzzle and make a picture in your head. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's maybe accurate, sometimes maybe less accurate, probably less accurate. But you don't have to do that. You can figure out exactly what the author's saying. I mean, ask yourself the question, okay, what is doing what? Right? And in this case, the disparity in their ages, the difference in their ages, is being increased by his health and his habits. Okay. That's a specific idea. Right? Not just that, they're different people. Okay, well, yeah. But you can figure out the language. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Let's keep reading. Line 85.
For having been a valetudinarian all his life, without activity of mind or body, he was a much older man in ways than in years.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Real quick. So they actually define this word for us. Every once in a while you see this on the SAT or PSAT, where they actually give you a definition. It's a very obscure word. All right. I never heard the word
valet. Nobody knows this word.
Yeah. Good luck with that one. Yeah. And that's the case here. Okay. Tell me what's a valetudinarian? What's the definition here?
A person in weak health who's overly concerned with his or her ailments.
Yes. Today, we'd probably call them a hypochondriac. Somebody that's obsessed with their health or with their health problems to an unhealthy degree. Yeah. It sounds like valedictorian. I like to make a joke that I was the valedictorian of my graduating class in college, which is a bad joke, not very funny. But anyway, I did get sick a bit in college. But anyway, so but yeah, he's like a hypochondriac. Okay. Now, what does it mean here when it says, for having been a valetudinarian all his life, without activity or mind or body, he was a much older man in ways than in years? What does that mean? He was a much older man in ways than in years.
It's saying that he wasn't like old, but he seemed like he was much older than he actually is.
Yeah. I wouldn't say he's not old, because it says here he hadn't married early, so he's probably old. But he seems even older.
Yeah, he's like not doing too well.
He's not doing well. No. He's old, but he seems really old.
Yeah.
Okay? Does that make sense? He's a much older man in ways than in years. It's not saying he's not old. He's old. He just acts even older. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Go and finish that off.
All right. And though everywhere beloved for the friendliness of his heart and his amiable temper, his talents could not have recommended him at any time.
Ooh, his amiable temper. Everywhere beloved for the friendliness of his heart and his amiable temper. What does amiable mean?
Is it like various temper?
Yeah, look it up. Look it up. Amiable definition. Okay. Amiable.
You even spell that. Having or displaying a friendly and pleasant manner.
Friendly. Do you know how to say friend in Spanish? You know this. Please tell me you know this.
Amigo.
Amigo. Amiable means friendly. Comes from the same root Latin word.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep. And then we see the word temper again, right? Like personality.
Right.
So it says, he's beloved for his friendliness of his heart and his amiable temper. His talents could not have recommended him at any time. What the author means there is his talents could not have recommended him socially any time. Like, he's a nice guy, but like, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a real nice guy. Okay. All right.
Okay. Cool.
And he's just not on the same level as Emma.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions about this?
No.
Okay. Sometimes I have students, when I'm working one-on-one with them, I'll have them reread the past after we've discussed everything and analyze the vocab and everything. I'll have them reread it again. And I might encourage you to do that. We're going to take a break here in just a minute. I don't want to spend the time doing that right now. But if you did that, I promise, it would all make perfect sense.
But it would flow a lot better.
It would all make sense. And but if you read, if you do it like a quick read, read it on a time test, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, whatever. It's the vocab is just complicated. The syntax is complicated. It's just tough. It's tough. But you can't do it timed until you can do it untimed first. And so, so you have to approach text this way. You have to look up the words. You've got to chew on the language. And if you're not doing that, you're not reading well. Again, you're just kind of swimming in that world of impressions that may or may not be accurate, and I'll be honest, are generally not.
Right.
Because every author is communicating specific ideas. And if you're just zipping through it, you're not understanding the ideas being communicated, and you're going to struggle on this whole section. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's take a little 3-minute break.
Okay.
I'm going to get some more coffee and go to the restroom. I encourage you to do the same. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about approaching these questions based on evidence in the text. All right?
Okay.
All right. See you in a minute, Katie.
See you.
All right.